Okay, well, thank you to the whole Looker team for putting this on. Great event. I'm excited to kind of share our growth in data. I think it's definitely a category that there's still a lot of growth and future in data. There's so much to do going forward, but with the tools we have now, boy, we're sure able to do a whole lot. So a little very briefly about me. My name is Chase Brammer. I've been the CTO for iFit for about the last 10 years. And I love fitness. Anything on our units I love, but I also love being out in the mountains and mountain bikes. So that's just a very brief about me. A little bit about the company. What is iFit? Just kind of a little background on that. We're the world's most innovative fitness platform. We're also the world's largest fitness manufacturer. You've probably heard of some of our brands that we own, like NordicTrack, ProForm, FreeMotion, and quite a few others. And to kind of help introduce kind of what we do, I actually have a really short video that kind of gives context of what we are and then how we're going to be using that data later on in the presentation.
We're saving ourselves from an extinction of experiences. We want to be able to experience wilderness and wide open spaces and big open roads.
Good morning. I'm your personal trainer, and I got a great workout for you today. Let's go. I'm taking up your incline at 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
I'm with you right here. Come with me.
Follow with me here.
Hard to beat views like this anywhere in the world.
At home, I want you to race me this round.
Nice work. Let's go.
The world's always bigger, and it's always more beautiful than we can think in our darkest moments. What if we viewed the stuff that gets thrown into our lives, the adversity that we face, as something we get to work with?
Sprint to the finish. We're almost there.
Join me.
Join me,
Join me, your trainer,
your trainer, John Peel.
Stacey Clark, Kirsty Goldso,
Johnny on the spot.
Tommy Ribs.
Hannah Eden.
So what are you waiting for? Let's start shaping and toning that body.
This is iFit.
So that's a little bit about us as a company. One thing that's really exciting about that with data is the engagement, right? We have a really great opportunity to not only help people's physical health, but their mental health and the different ways we can interact with them through that data to drive engagement, to motivate them more, to get them to that next progressive milestone is really interesting. And so gathering that data and being able to action on that data has such a direct impact, I'm sure on all of your businesses, but definitely on ours as well, of being able to take that data into actions and insights back into the customer. And so we need to figure out our data strategy. And so I'm going to walk through kind of our journey on that, on getting to a more modern BI and data platform, and then kind of some future steps beyond that. So the first thing is we knew we needed something, right? Even before COVID, our user growth was just hockey sticking, and then COVID hit and a hockey sticked even more. And we're just continuing to see that just explosive user growth. And that drove a really big need and demand for insight into our data on how we action on that with the users, because our user base was also growing more diverse and more international. How would we interact with that? And then finally, I mean, we had data in so many different silos through the organization. And then getting everyone to agree on key metrics that kept being added or evolved. For example, a good example of that is workout completed, right? There might be 3 or 4 different definitions organizationally floating around of like, well, they did 100% of the workout, or they just started the workout, or different levels of that. And finally, we just need to know we need to get something done to kind of wrangle all that and get us all unified and going in the same direction so we can really benefit from our data. So we then started to plan for growth. We've started to bring in some outside experts to kind of help us ramp that up with Analytics 8. They helped us kind of design and implement a data strategy, and really from internally kind of from the very beginning, we had a very deliberate focus on building our internal core competency and internal knowledge in teams. But while we were doing that, we wanted to augment that with contract teams. And maintainability of the data was a design consideration straight out of the rip. We needed to make sure that this was a long-term solution and not just answering a short-term question. And then we took about 6 weeks and we really did a deep dive through all layers of the organization and started asking questions of like, what are the bottlenecks? What are the things the way they are? Why are they being done this way? And how can we do it differently? And then came the next point. This is maybe the most important point of the whole project was understanding what data results we want, and not just saying, well, let's just get all of the data, because there's so much data that is always available. So being able to prioritize that and focus the teams was really a leading indicator for success. Finally, we were able to then take that and then unify around our key metrics, around different data points, different data strategies, and those definitions. And we developed an ELT strategy that would give that immediate insight into that was the foundation for that long-term success. So very briefly, this is kind of a high-level look at our modern stack at a glance, if you will. Is we have a lot of different data sources on the left, from different consumer pieces to relational data stores like Postgres. We ETL those or ELT those through Fivetran. We also have some other tools like Stitch that we use some as well. And those really land into Snowflake. We've really enjoyed Snowflake. Snowflake has been a fantastic tool for us because we can just, in comparison, like where we were on Redshift before, Snowflake has been able to scale up with our compute needs a lot faster and with a lot less management and overhead. So we've really enjoyed being able to work with Snowflake. And one of the key tools kind of in Snowflake that we've really find is transforming that from an ETL process to an ELT process. And really by shifting that transformation after the landing zone in Snowflake and later using a tool, we use a tool called dbt. We also use Airflow some. But really, I think dbt has been a critical piece of that success of being able to really clearly define that data and move it through the different layers of sanitizing that data, documenting, cleansing, and connecting and pipelining that data. And finally getting that into a really easy connected view, which was Looker. We chose Looker because Looker and Snowflake really complemented each other really well, of being able to access in to Snowflake and be able to get really live insights. Before, we had a lot of trouble with getting people in data silos and getting stale data because their version of their BI tool had a different data silo or different data mart than what was there. And now we can run all of that live against Snowflake with Looker. And so that's been really fantastic. So storing the data, we were able to store all that in Snowflake, centralize it, to segregate the data. It also allowed us to be able to pivot really quickly, really like instant scaling and copy and sharing. That was really important for us. Like we needed to have some snapshot freezes of data, and being able to do that was really quick with Snowflake. We were able to ingest data just really rapidly from everywhere. And we're just saying hey, just give us all the data and let's get into the landing zone, and then let's figure out the curation of that data, and that can evolve, but it's already in our data layer. And finally, we had a lot of shadow marts, right? And kind of data that was just floating around, and wanted to get rid of those. And so this reduced that significantly. Talked a little about this with transforming that data, going from an ELT to a ETL, or ETL to an ELT. And really, by having everything stored in a central location, we could then have dbt come in and transform that data and add that business logic of connecting, disparate data sources together to get a more meaningful data set. And compared to those, traditional tools, this makes it much more effective. Really, we were taking, at some point, our metrics were closer to the months of terms of getting some of these reports, that now we're able to then curate and create entirely new reports from the ground up in days, and then get those answers within minutes once it's built, right within Looker, and being able to query the right data store. So our data curation to a result time went from months to days, by having the right pipeline and the right tools. This one can't be overstated, is the documentation and data lineage being updated and generated, of knowing how the data is flowing through the system. We brought on some new data engineers, some new analysts, and it's really easy to point them to that documentation and say, well, look, here's this field. We've got field level documentation. These are how these different tables relate to each other and where they're coming from. And having that in a visual tool has been really helpful. Troubleshooting is almost boring because it's so much easier. We know exactly how the data is flowing. And this one, maybe of the data portion, maybe the most important piece is we needed to have organizational confidence in the data. And otherwise, people don't trust the data, and then they start saying, oh, well, then they don't action on the data. And so building really strong confidence in the data was key to success of getting the organizational buy-in. And so being able to have confidence in our table down at the table and column level with tests, freshness alerts, with documentation and lineage, drove that downstream confidence to our analysts and to our business consumer users of what was really driving confidence. And that started with having a great data structure and process up front. And finally, it kind of reduced a lot of the tension between our business and data teams by giving them more transparency into the process of like, hey, here's the data, here's the flow of it. It doesn't need to be this mystery sandbox. And another thing that isn't on here is, we found that a lot of our data engineers and analysts had kind of this Swiss Army knife of different, SQL queries or scripts that they would run to get their different slices of data, which made it very challenging because then they would have different answers. And that kind of went back to not having a unified view and definition. By centralizing all of those kind of scripts and tools and queries into a code-driven, commit-driven with code reviews process with DBT, we were able to kind of break down those silos of different analysts into a more centralized area. Next was the data definitions. This is now moving into kind of the analyst layer, is everyone had a different understanding. I kind of mentioned the workout completed was a great one for us. But we also had lots of different data silos, which drove different results. So our studio, which we film a lot of content in, they might run a report on workouts and get a completely different report than what the engagement team was looking at. And that wasn't acceptable. We needed to make sure that they were getting the same results. So being able to centralize those with the same, and a lot of those were definitional, not even data problems. It was people were creating different queries and different definitions of what those KPIs are. So centralize those, canonize those. We use DBT for the field level documentation, and then for our internal use, we use Confluence for kind of the larger KPI definition of like, here's the reasoning, and kind of the more bullet point summary of all the reasons for that KPI. And then we went back to the field level documentation for DBT. And finally, hooking it all up with Looker. We now have a centralized, governed, and trusted source of truth, which is really what we were looking for. And we're able to not only create that for guided analytics, but people are able to drill down in the data in a very meaningful way. We're able to curate actionable insights into our data of being able to see, well, how we need to move customers, and where we can reduce churn, where we can identify areas for better engagement, where to segment those customers to then engage with them on. Has become much, much easier. We've been able to share data within our organization and with partner organizations in a much more secure and trusted way. And finally, we position ourselves with a platform that will grow with us and some use cases that continues to evolve. Some things that I didn't mention on kind of our architecture overview was then pushing a lot of this data out of this pipeline into different ML tools and different AI tools. Also pushing a lot of in and out with different Kafka streams, and making sure that we are using our data to help drive decisions for our analysts, but also in a machine learning way. And that starts with having a good source of truth, which this establishes. And so really the outcome and the results are that we're able to have a really clean and vetted data logic that the teams have confidence in finally. Which is really great. Looker now drives all of our primary consumer KPIs and our investor reporting. reporting turnaround, it literally changed from months to minutes. It's kind of a joke when people say, oh, I have to wait a minute for the query to run. Well, it's like, oh my goodness, it's only taking a minute to crunch this, where before it took a month. We're able to align all the upstream and downstream portions of the business on the importance of data as a design consideration. So taking that all the way out to like the feature engineering teams and having those discussions on data and the data hygiene, quality, documentation upstream from the data team, so they're not just the last person on the bus having to deal with any kind of data irregularities. We're able to push that actionable data to our engagement efforts much faster. We're able to segment our audiences around that with that, and we're able to drive it into all of our use cases for helping our customers really continue to grow and meet their goals and achieve better fitness and mental health. This is starting to roll beyond just of our consumer data. We're now moving into all of our enterprise data. And I also mentioned that we're using this to pipe a lot of our ML pipelines in and out of our data layer. And really, I think the summary is then that now we feel like we've got a confident platform that is adaptable, well-structured, and well-process driven, that we've got all chains of the organization from the feature engineering teams to the data teams to the analysts to the ML teams and to the business cases, and even down to the investors, are all aligned in this chain, where before each kind of had their own reporting metric. And so we're aligned and able to move forward in a good platform, which has really kind of made the difference for us. And so going from 0 to 60 has been a fantastic experience to see the results of these different toolings that have enabled that.